Public Works and Transportation Committee for Wednesday, February the 15th. I am the chair member, Xanthia Oliver for the 3rd District. At this time, I will call the roll for those members, who are committee first. Councilman Vince White, Vice Chair.
Present.
Councilwoman Bracy.
Present.
Councilmember Nathan Fields. No, Councilman Begita Fields is absent with leave. Councilmember James Spadola.
Present.
President Ernest Trippy Conga.
Here.
And myself. Oh, now I will call non-committee members. Councilman McCoy, Councilman Yolanda McCoy.
Here.
Is there any other council members on Zoom? Ms.
Not
Kendra?
this time.
Okay, let me know if anyone comes on. As a friendly reminder, members of the committee shall only be making motions and seconding. If there's any questions for anyone, you may direct them when you get up and speak. Okay, we're going to go look at the agenda, and we have reversed the agenda around. The first person up will be Commissioner Kelly Williams. She's here to speak in reference to ordinance 23006. Thank you, Commissioner, for coming in public.
Good evening.
Hello.
Thank you, President Oliver. I'm here to speak to the First Amendment to Contract 23008. The administration is looking to amend this contract for the Water Division Building, Raceway, and Facilities Management and Maintenance Services. It was a bid contract that was awarded to Merit Construction Services, construction engineers. And we're looking to amend the contract to add 4 one-year extensions. The company has agreed to hold its pricing for the next 2 years, and then for the following 2 years, they've agreed to just do CPI for that year and then the year after that. We've also asked to increase the capital allowance for plant-related upgrades to go from $100,000 to $500,000, and allow them to perform all HVAC-related system inspection services. That's what we're asking the committee to look at and consider.
Okay, now Merit Construction's engineers, they're currently working with.
Yes, they are currently working. And just to be clear, this is for our water facilities only. So it's the 2 water plants that we operate, the pumping stations, and the, just the water-related facilities.
Well, I must say, I heard they're doing a really good job down there, and I was able to meet with a few of them. Do we have any comments from council members? Councilmember Mr. White?
Commissioner, you used the term CPI. Maybe some people on the call and Zoom may not know what that is. Could you elaborate, please?
Yes, that's the Consumer Price Index.
Thank you.
Councilwoman McCoy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to really read this all the way through. I was looking, you said 4 one-year extensions. Please tell me exactly, how long is the contract for this company?
So currently, it's just a 1-year contract. And so I'm asking, I'm before you now to ask for 4 one-year extensions. So at this time next year, we would reevaluate their performance and see that they're, doing well. If they're not, then we would ask for another extension. And then the year after that, ask for another extension. And what they're agreeing to do is hold their price, which is amazing in this current environment, considering that inflation's been at like 6, 7, 8%. So it's really beneficial for us to consider this, given that the contract is for $1.6 million, inflation at 7%, that's a couple $100,000.
Now follow?
Yes, follow up, please.
Thank you. So by giving us, I guess that they are fairly new to, we're working with them, they're fairly new to us.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why we're looking at this extension, so we can evaluate year to year how they're doing. If they actually are doing well, what would be a regular contract for them?
We do most of our contracts just annual contracts to give us the opportunity to reevaluate. What this avoids is, a long bidding process, and it also allows us to, go forward with, holding the price as it is. And with our water division and our water utility and our buildings and our complicated processes, tends to be a large learning curve when maintenance is involved. So, but we never want to lock ourselves in with a company that's not doing well.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. White.
Commissioner,
Yes.
the cost is $1,622,600,000, correct?
Correct.
Plus increased costs.
No. So for next year, it'll be 16226.
Year 4.
No, in the third year, it'll go up the CPI. And then in year 4, it'll go up the CPI.
So it's capped at the CPI.
Correct.
So the options are exercised by whom?
By us. So I'll come before you and ask for that option.
And there's, and we obviously I don't have the contract in front of me, but what's the default language for you or the vendor? Is there default language?
So the default would be we just don't renew and we go out to bid.
Okay. Thank you.
And I have to say, I'm glad you have it set up like this from dealing with prior, contractors. You had some issues, so this is good that you're doing the year to year, keeping it
Yeah.
cap. Any more questions from council members? Do we have any members on Zoom that would like to ask any questions?
No hands are raised.
Is there anyone from the public that has any questions? Okay, this is an ordinance.
No questions.
I'm sorry. Someone has a question, Kendra?
No, she said no more questions.
Oh, okay, thank you. This is an ordinance, and it's required to be voted out of committee. So with that being said, it's been, is there a motion to move this out of committee?
Motion to move.
Second.
It's been properly moved in second. The ordinance been voted out of committee. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good, thank you, Commissioner. Okay, next we have a presentation on reassessment process. Whoever is here to speak, please come sit up front. Announce your name.
Would you prefer that I sit or stand?
No, sitting's fine. She wants to come up. No, you okay? Okay.
Good evening. My name is Michael McFarland. I'm the
Could you
senior.
speak in your mic and start over? What's your name again? I'm sorry.
Sure. Good evening. My name is Michael McFarland. I'm the Senior Appraisal Project Supervisor for Tyler Technologies, responsible for the successful reassessment in Newcastle County. And it is a pleasure to be with you tonight, Council President, Committee Chair, and all other council persons. Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to present a little information about the forthcoming reassessment.
Could you bring the mic closer to you, please? Just bend it, sir. There you go.
Better?
And we do have this in our packages. I'm
Thank
with
you.
you. Continue.
And so the reassessment for Newcastle County is a large endeavor. The last reassessment in the county occurred in 1983. There are approximately 212,500 parcels throughout Newcastle County. I'm here before you today as we are entering the field inspection phase specific to the city of Wilmington. We have started in August of 2021. We've already completed approximately 110,000, or roughly 54% of the total inventory. And starting on next Monday, February the 20th, we will begin the field inspection process within the city of Wilmington. Advanced slide, please. So why are we here? As you most likely are aware, we are here because the court determined that the property values have changed significantly, and there's an incongruency between the 1983 assessed values and the current market values. And so the court determined that under the provisions of the law, the current assessments are no longer reflective of market value, and thus they do not represent the true and correct value of money. And so, i.e., the assessed values were not uniform. And so rather than the court ordering a stipulation to conduct a reassessment, Newcastle County entered into an agreement to conduct a reassessment before any court cases were determined. The new assessed values will be effective for tax year 2025. Advanced slide, please. This decision came about in May of 2020, and again, Newcastle County agreed to conduct a countywide reassessment. Advanced slide, please. So what is a full countywide reassessment? Reassessment values all properties at their current market value, restoring equity to properties within a class, i.e. residential, and across classes between residential and non-residential. Advanced slide, please. There are some common fears associated with a reassessment, especially if it affects taxpayers and constituents who have not experienced one recently. Some of the common fears are, will I pay more taxes? Will the government spend more as a result of the reassessment? And what if it's the case that I've made improvements to my property over time that were previously unknown? Is there any penalty during the discovery of previously unknown or permitted improvements to my property? Those are the three common fears, generally speaking. Advanced slide, please. And so first and foremost, does a reassessment mean that I will pay more in taxes? And the long and short answer is no, not necessarily. It depends. And we'll flush this out a bit more later in the presentation, but a property's assessment should reflect its current market value. That's what the Chancery Court held, and that is a common prescription for what a fair reassessment means. And so some taxpayers currently could be paying more than their fair share, while others are paying less. And a reassessment, again, is meant to restore equity between your neighbors, if you will, and then across property classes between residential and non-residential property classes alike. A reassessment does not necessarily mean that your assessment will increase. Our job is to reflect the current market value, in this case, in a prospective way, because it will be effective for 2025. I think it's fair to say, generally speaking, that market values from 1983 are probably different than market values as they stand today, or again, in 2025. Does that mean that they will always increase? No, but I think it's fair to say that in most cases, that real estate values have increased since 1983. If your assessment does increase, it does not necessarily mean that your associated taxes will. Advanced slide, please. So, will the county collect more taxes as a result of the reassessment? The county is capped on state law as to how much additional revenue can be generated. Following the reassessment, property tax rates will be adjusted to ensure the county does not collect more than is allowed by statute. Per state law, the county is capped at 15% increase in tax revenue subsequent to a reassessment. Newcastle County officials have committed to raising no additional revenue as a result of the reassessment, or to say that differently, it's revenue neutral for the portion, the county portion of the real estate tax bill. Advanced slide, please. So there are other portions to your real estate tax bill. One of the other portions is the school district. Is a school district allowed to raise taxes as a result of a reassessment? Similar to the county, school districts are capped by state law as to how much can be increased. 10% increase in additional revenue is the state cap. And if you are concerned that the school district portion of your real estate taxes should increase, then we would encourage you or any concerned constituents to contact the school district directly to address those concerns. Advanced slide, please. If it's the case that you live in a municipality, or in this case specifically the city of Wilmington, does that mean that the count, or the municipal or the city portion of your real estate tax bill will go up. A municipality may increase their portion of the property tax rate following a reassessment. In this particular case, there is no statutory limit as to the amount of the increase. And so in Newcastle County, most, I believe all municipalities rely on the county's assessments. If it's the case that you're a resident of the city of Wilmington, you should, we would urge you at Tyler to contact city officials regarding any concerns you have specific to the post-reassessment municipal taxes. Advanced slide, please. So, a reassessment itself does not increase or decrease tax revenue. It only apportions the total tax burden more fairly across the parcels by setting newly assessed values. So while the overall impact on a community is capped by state law, individual owners may see fluctuations based on their fair share relative to how much they're paying in the current tax schema. Advanced slide, please. Here is a hypothetical figure, and the point here is to illustrate the inverse relationship between what is most likely a rise in your real estate tax assessment and the associated decrease in your tax rate. And so in the example 1983 on your left, the blue bar, the assessment is $150,000. In the hypothetical in 2023, the assessment would be $250,000. Advanced slide, please. However, notice the tax rate. On the left-hand side, associated with the $150,000 market value, you have a tax rate of 0.74. Conversely, on the right-hand side, you see a precipitous drop in the tax rate. It's now 0.44. And so again, the inverse relationship between a rise in market value and a decrease in the associated tax rate. Advanced slide, please. So the net result is the tax bill itself, your real estate taxes remain the same. In the example, $1,100 annually. Advanced slide, please. So this is a conceptual graph, help to understand what could potentially happen at the parcel level or for your home or business. If you are currently paying, if your property's value change is lower than the average, that means you are already paying more in the current schema, in which case your taxes are likely to decrease. The second example is if your property values have changed and they are similar to the average change for the rest of your neighbors, then the likelihood is that your taxes would not decrease or increase too much. Say about the same. And the third conceptual example is if your property's value change is higher than the average change for your neighbors, the most likely result is your taxes will go up. The thought being that you are currently paying less than your fair share. So this is a conceptual slide meant to illustrate what might happen at the individual or parcel level. Advanced slide, please. So one of the other common fears is the discovery of unknown improvements. And so updating assessment records include Tyler Technologies on behalf of the county reflecting the reality of the parcel at the time of inspection. And so if it's the case that you put a shed or a garage or added a pool and it was previously unpermitted, it should be known that there is no retroactive punitive measures being taken by the county, particularly from the land use or the policing authority, if you will, for the permitting of improvements. And so to say that differently, our observations at the time of inspection will reflect all improvements that currently exist on the parcel, but there's no retroactive reporting back to the county's land use department for lack of disclosure previously. Advanced slide, please. All right, so what are the phases in a reassessment? Simply speaking, first is aerial imagery that has been conducted and continues to be updated on an annual basis. This is conducted by fixed-wing aircraft from a third-party company that we have an established relationship with. It is not through drone imagery. The fixed-wing aircraft flies at approximately 8,000 to 12,000 feet in elevation. Data collection began again in August of 21, so fall of 21, close enough, and it is expected to last until late of 24. Our current projection is field inspections to be completed by 1/1 of 2024. After that is the data analysis phase. Simply speaking, this is a two-part process. We collect the data and then we analyze the data. So the analysis is set to begin in a few months and will conclude late in 2024. And after the analysis is done, tentative assess notices are sent out, and there's the opportunity for any taxpayer to participate through a valuation, review, and informal meeting. This is to occur late in '24 into calendar year '25. Advanced slide, please. We spoke a little bit about the aerial imagery, and I know time is limited, so advanced slide, please. So what does the data collection process consist of? This is a really important part for both Tyler representatives in the field and for the citizens of the city of Wilmington. Our effort is, and one of our primary focuses is safety, and we want to be conspicuously identified at all times, and we do that by wearing Tyler branded construction style vests or construction style winter jackets when it's cold out. Also, each and every data collector or field inspector does use their own personal vehicle, but they do have Tyler branded card magnets with our office number on them. And they also carry with them a Newcastle County issued ID badge at all times. In addition to that, we have a website that we run where we have photos of all of our data collectors that is updated on a continual basis. What does the inspection consist of? It consists of an exterior inspection, so no interior inspection is to occur unless there's a outstanding or material reason where the taxpayer or homeowner invites our collector in to see something that might be out of the ordinary. My basement's flooded, my kitchen's in really bad shape, et cetera, et cetera. So the exterior inspection consists of, first and foremost, knocking on the door to interact with the homeowner or taxpayer, and then subsequent to that, conducting an exterior inspection and measuring essentially the improvements on the property. All right, what happens with that data? Well, we put it into a CAMA system. CAMA is an acronym for Computer Assisted Mass Appraisal, AKA a database that is specific to real estate valuation. Advanced slide, please. What comes from this? So we conduct our observations, and then prior to any assessment notice, there's an opportunity for the public to participate insofar as we mail out this data mailer. The data mailer has a photo as well as a sketch, and then lists all other pertinent information that pertain to the characteristics of one's property. This is an opportunity for a taxpayer to participate. If there's any missing or wrong information, we ask that they fix it and send it back in. This is particularly important because we're not conducting a full interior inspection. And so we always say no one knows your home better than you do, and in an effort to be as fair and accurate as possible, we do ask for the public's participation in this regard. Advanced slide, please. Income and expense survey. This is a slightly different flavor of the data mailer, and it's particular to investment grade income producing properties. Rather than conduct evaluation based on characteristics of your home's amenities, if you will. This is typically done for investment grade real estate where income streams are how the property is most adequately or appropriately valued. And so slightly different flavor of the data mailer. This will be sent out to non-residential property owners. Advanced slide, please. And just another example of the income statement. Advanced slide, please. And a slightly different flavor. So this is different depending on what sub-property on the non-residential side we're talking about. For example, offices versus industrial. Advanced slide, please. And we also encourage property owners and or their assigned managers to participate in this process, much like we're asking homeowners to participate in the process of correcting the data mailer. Advanced slide, please. And so what comes into our analysis? Well, it's probably no surprise, location, location, location. What are the market influences? Obviously, we've had a drastically changing market in the last few years. What is the age, the condition, the improvements themselves? How many are there? Are there outbuildings, things of that nature? What neighborhood is it in? These all are characteristics that go into our determination of an opinion of value. Advanced slide, please. And so we will conduct a sales study of the market specific to Newcastle County, and this is typically used for the valuation of residential properties. Advanced slide, please. Okay, and similar to a Zestimate, we use advanced regression techniques to estimate the universe of properties. Advanced slide, please. There are 3 accepted approaches to value for ad valorem real estate assessment. They are the market or sales approach, we discussed that. The income approach, we touched on that very briefly, but it is the capitalized value of the income stream, less expenses. And then there's also the cost approach, and by Delaware law, we are required to develop the cost approach for all parcels. Advanced slide, please. So what happens, late in '24, property owners will receive a notice of the new tentative appraised value. This is another opportunity for the taxpayers to participate in this process. Notice the operable word here is tentative because we have not yet certified the tax roll, or I should say more specifically, the assessor in Newcastle has not yet done that. So if one believes that that tentative appraised value is incorrect, we encourage you to file what we call an informal appeal. You'll meet with one of our valuation specialists, and we will have the opportunity to discuss why you might think that you can't sell your home for that amount of money. Naturally speaking, if we undervalue your property, we probably expect not to hear from you. Advanced slide, please. These are the informal hearings that we talked about, and so again, gives the opportunity for public to participate in this process. Advanced slide, please. And the goals are, again, to provide a one-on-one meeting for property owners and our appraisal staff to have a discussion about why they might think the property value or assessment is incorrect. Advanced slide, please. All right, so together, quality data collection along with a detailed analysis and modeling, and last but not least, with an accurate valuation review and hearing process will lead to a fair, equitable, and transparent reassessment. Advanced slide, please. Last but not least, there are a few pieces or slides that speak to our contact information. Advanced slide. Myself, Denny, who is the assessor for Newcastle County. And last slide, please. Here's a QR code that takes us to our reassessment webpage. And so we have a suite of information available that hope is helpful. So if it's ever the case that more information is needed, we would encourage anyone to go to the website and hopefully that satisfies your concerns. If not, give us a call. We're happy to help. And thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yes, I have a question. Is there a rush to knock on doors? And my reason for that is because we're having a meeting this month regarding this assessment. So I would request to not start knocking on doors until March. I mean, I would like to fair warn my residents. I think this is very abruptly. I know it's, from the court and from the court for us, we have to do X amount of years. But I was wondering, could you hold off and wait until March? If it's not any rush, so we can have our meeting, and I would like to invite you to the meeting so you can discuss this in front of a group of residents that this is going to affect. I'm really thinking about the east side with the school coming up. We have a brand-new school, and you're talking about knocking on doors over there, and because of the amount of money they're putting in school, I would like the residents over there to hear exactly what's going on. So that would be one request. Secondly, I heard you say that that this is more than likely your taxes won't be going up. And I read an article in the New York Times that says black homeowners face discrimination and appraisal. So I have the article right here. So it is a known fact that when these appraisals come through, discriminatory acts are occurring by identifying, addressing appraisals, discrimination. It's all kinds of articles from the New York Times that's new. So this is happening throughout the United States, not just here. So one of my questions, I know this is data-driven, what is the, when you say a homeowner, you're not to go in, you're just doing externals, unless someone invites you in. I just find that a little difficult to understand. So what are some of the ramifications of this process, period?
As to your first question about the area,
Yes.
I'm sorry to say I don't know your exact area and what council district you represent, but I'm happy to get more information and attempt to.
Bancroft on the east side, right down the street. The governor's put millions of dollars into a school they're building now, and it should be up in a couple of years. So it's no secret that a lot of people from out of town are buying houses. They're flipping them, and some people who've been over there for years, and their property value may be at 60, 70, and all of a sudden they're selling houses in the area, and it's called gentrification, in the area for 150, and they're just running people out. Eventually they will, especially when you come through and say, you know, you're gonna go do an assessment. If you do assessment at Bancroft with the money that's going on there, their property taxes are definitely gonna go high. So some of the things we could talk offline. Another thing I noticed you said about, the cap in Newcastle County, but there doesn't seem to be a cap for Wilmington. So that's gonna affect, not just my district, I'm talking about many districts, because if it's not a cap in Wilmington, you can go on the west side with them big houses or in the 5th district or the 6th district, and these assessments are going to run some of the seniors out into high risers. I mean, I have relatives in Philly and they ran them out. So I'm very aware of this whole process. I mean, no fault of yours, I'm just saying. So I'm going to let somebody else talk because I like to talk to you offline.
Madam Chair.
I'm
Thank
happy
you.
to have a discussion with
Next, I like Council Spadola.
Thank you for coming today. First off, really appreciate the proactive communication from last week where you emailed, I think, probably a handful of all the elected officials, just announcing you were starting on Monday. I was able to email that out. I had the highest open rate I think I've ever had. So people are very interested in reassessment. So the more you can speak to it, I think the residents will definitely appreciate it. My question is about, so the city of, I'll give you context. The city of Wilmington right now collects about $46 million annually in property tax, okay? On the Wilmington Financial Advisory Council months ago, we were discussing the risk. You said that the city can't increase revenue. The concern is if it could decrease revenue. So my question specifically is, when you are looking at the city of Wilmington, when you are reassessing properties within the city, are you essentially drawing a line around the city and saying, okay, before we go in here, they're collecting 46 million, and when we go out, they have to be collecting 46 million? Because otherwise, there's drastic financial ramifications if we could finish this process and the city's collecting 35 million, which could be possible if, you know, houses in Browntown didn't appreciate, or the assessed value got thrown out relative to values in Hockessin. So I think you get my question. Looking forward to the answer.
I do, and thank you for your question. It should be known, we have absolutely nothing to do with establishment of the tax rate. Tyler Technologies' contract, and this is very common, is to reflect the accurate market value of all parcels in the city. Typically, what happens after that is those values are aggregated, and then local governments budget or set the tax millage rate associated or relative to that aggregate market value. And so our job is to reflect the market value. I can't speak to taxes because it quite literally by definition is not our function. But I certainly appreciate your concern, particularly if tax revenues were to go down as a result of the total amount of real estate taxes collected. That is outside of my purview, and I hope you understand that.
Sure, but it is a possibility, is what you're
It's
saying.
possible.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
Next, Councilwoman McCoy.
Thank you. One of the things that you mentioned was that you've already done about 53% of the assessments already?
Oh, I should clarify. We have inspected 53% of the parcels. We haven't actually levied the assessment related to that.
Okay.
Sorry for the miscommunication.
I was like, wow. I mean, well, I thought that just did not include, the city of Wilmington. I was like, wow, you got through that much already? All right. Thank you for clarifying that. And then the other question that I did have was, I think they've kind of already touched on this a bit, and it was more so about whether or not assessments actually affect appraisals. But we can, I'll definitely follow up with another question like offline, because I think that is definitely a deeper dive. And you've already made us aware that you have really all you do is basically collect data and pass that data on. So that's something that we probably could look into elsewhere. I think that may be the only question that I have. It was about, also, I know that you guys are going to you started on Monday. What is the time allotted that you're giving yourself to try to get through the city of Wilmington?
We have our forecast for the first prescribed areas is about 4,000 parcels in total, and it's, according to my forecast analysis, 11.2 days, so 11.2 working days, so 2 to 3 weeks, and we'll have a better understanding about the remainder of our forecast analysis once we kind of do that first area. And the reason why is because the housing stock the level of density in the city of Wilmington is different than what we've experienced throughout the rest of the county. And so that will necessarily change our production. And so I would rather give an estimate in the first area and then come back with a more confident forecast for you, if that's possible, about how long it will take us to inspect the totality of the city. And the only reason I say that, again, is because we expect our production to increase, our inspection production amount to increase relative to what we have been inspecting in other parts of the county.
Okay. I'm sorry, Chair, if I could just ask
Sure.
one more question.
Following.
Just wanted to find out, what was the parcel number for the city?
In total,
Yes.
I don't have the
Okay,
total.
that's it.
I can certainly email you tomorrow morning. I don't have it offhand, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Is that all right now, Councilman McCoy?
Yes, that's it, thank you.
Okay, next I have Councilman White. I'm sorry, what's your hand? I'm sorry.
Mr. President, do you want to go? All right. I don't think you got a chance to speak to the chair's comments about discriminatory practice in the appraisal. Could you speak to that, please?
Certainly. It is an emerging topic and a concern throughout the appraisal industry.
I'm sorry, speak up. Sorry.
Sorry. It is certainly something that has gotten a lot of attention recently. I've read the New York Times article. I am a lifelong resident of the city of Philadelphia. I've worked there for many years. I'm familiar with City Councilwoman Sherelle Parker's position on this. And I also sit on the State Board of Certified Real Estate Appraisers for the state of Pennsylvania. And we recently instituted a mandatory 2-hour, it's yet to be codified by law, but 2-hour mandatory continuing education class on appraisal bias. And so in this particular context, mass appraisal is a bit different than fee appraisal, and we don't consider ownership whatsoever. We oftentimes don't enter the home. And we, again, our job is to reflect current market value. And so I'm ultimately
That's what appraisal does, right?
That's right.
So this is more conversational. That's what appraisal does. So ask the question, because black and brown communities have been a victim of these practices. And you say that your inspectors will make observational evaluations of the exterior, and if invited in, they'll then make some observations of what the conditions are. And I'm saying to you, I think it would be fair to say that some of our communities might be shooting themselves in the foot either way. And the tongue-in-cheek response that, if I got a low appraisal, I'm not going to call you, to say that's not, I don't think that's reflective of people who want the best for the city. But the question is, 2-hour training on these biases, although well-intended, doesn't get me the comfort level of ensuring that even in a data-driven model, that these biases won't permeate that model. And back to what the chair has said, is that we deal with communities that have already been affected by these biases, and yet your role is to come into those communities and say, this is what, we're not going to make it better. I understand neutral, but I want you to understand the sensitivity of this subject matter to the full extent that I can convey it. That on the whole we understand, but at the end of the day, it's our communities that have normally been affected the worst, and I have not heard anything comforting that may not be the case.
I appreciate your comments, and I certainly respect your concern, Councilperson White. If it's the case that permeations and consideration of bias occur in our establishment of market values, that means I failed at my job because I didn't accurately reflect the market. My job is to accurately reflect the market of the real estate and not of the individuals who might occupy those homes.
Yeah, but one of your benchmarks is neighborhoods, right?
That location.
And again, this is not necessarily about you, although you're here, but it's about neighborhoods. And so the things that you check off are things that historically, location, these things, I want to be real clear that the community needs to understand how these variables may affect their assessment, good or bad, up or down. I just think that's not a conversation that we want to take lightly to that extent. And full disclosure, you know, I'm a real estate professional, licensed in Delaware and PA. So these issues in Wall Street Journal or New York Times are nothing new to me. You know, but I understand that it's not fee-based. I understand that you're doing this on a data-driven system, but it doesn't, I give you no sway, because the end results can be very crippling to an already crippling community, and not necessarily majority community, I mean, not necessarily minority community, but as well to the majority community. So I will look interesting in your practices and your models, because the data is only as good as the people put it in. That bias that exists in the data compilation. It exists in all parts. You have a form to be completed by someone who may question, or you want the interior, but that may not be understandable, may not be relatable on a lot of different degrees. And this is a conversation I would have, you know, it's not bilingual. Are you offering any of this in a bilingual?
We do have bilingual translators for our phone. I don't know if we have published material that will be bilingual, but if that's a sensitivity that we can accommodate, we're happy to do that. And just generally speaking, Councilperson, I'm happy to have further and ongoing conversations with you about your concerns.
And I appreciate, I just want the community to know that these are the concerns, hopefully of all council members. And again, not to put you on the spot per se, but the practice of appraisal, you know, to shine some light on that. And anything that you can do to allay my humble fears, as well as I believe my constituents' fears, we would welcome it. So thank you, Madam President.
Council President?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So whenever there's a conversation around reassessment, there's always been a fear of people having to pay more taxes, but you're saying that's not the intention. So, but what's the goal of this?
Yeah,
of
the
this,
goal is a
exercise?
restoration of equity, Council President, is a restoration of equity so that everyone is paying their fair share. That's not to say all residential homes will have the same tax bill, because naturally the improvements are different, right? Everybody has a little bit of a different improvement, on, you know, in most cases. And so, again, it's to restore equity between your neighbors and also to restore equity across property classes. And so if it's the case that an industrial warehouse has been underassessed, by bringing all properties or parcels up to current market value, it restores equity among the residents and taxpayers, business owners of the county.
Okay, just a follow-up, Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
How do you define a neighborhood?
Well, neighborhood has a firm definition, and so I can give you the textbook definition of a neighborhood if you like.
The one that you used, that your company is going to use.
Sure, and so a neighborhood in a common sense, in the residential sense, because typically non-residential parcels don't have neighborhoods, they have zones or location factors, but a neighborhood meaning there's a conformity among the housing stock. It has similar available services and amenities, and also has established natural or man-made boundaries, typically major traffic arteries. And so our analysis does consider redrawing neighborhood lines as appropriate based on the statistics in the residential sense from sales.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Another question I have, will you be giving us or emailing us the areas that you will be starting with first? And to my first question, is it possible that we could push that date back from Monday the 20th, and we're just getting this presentation, and as I stated, I know I'm having a meeting in Stubbs with some residents, and I would love to invite you. So if it's possible, if you can go back and check or talk to Matt Myers, maybe I could give him a call. So this would just be pushed back to at least March, so I could put out a flyer, just that we know we're having a meeting, but I would like to add that on the flyer. I mean, this is very important, just to jump out there and we're knocking on doors and we're doing this. And, you know, I mean, you have to take the heat because you're doing a presentation, right? So it's like, you do start to drive. You know, it's like, I'm listening, and I'm very familiar with this, what's going on here. Like I said, and I know who Councilwoman is in Philly, sure, I know just who she is. So it starts out, example, like an officer gives someone a ticket, because this is how all this starts. So you get a speeding ticket, you don't go to court, and then you get a subpoena, and you don't show up. Now you have a warrant, okay? And this is that same process to me, that you come out, you do assessment. You have seniors who've been in neighborhoods, you've seen it all before, right? So you have seniors who've been in these neighborhoods for years, and they get moved out. So I'm hoping that we can move that date back from the 20th. I mean, today is Thursday, we're talking about Monday knocking on doors. Could someone please put their phone on mute? Thank you. And another thing. Okay, Councilman McCoy, you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I only had just one question, one last question. It's, we've had several companies or several businesses actually made large purchases within the past few years. And they've actually went back and had those businesses reassessed, basically in order to get things lowered, like their taxes lowered. Will they be reassessed again? Like, we need to find out, are they going to be looked at one more time to make certain that they got it right the first time?
And just so I understand the context of your question,
Okay.
there are large businesses that may have previously filed an appeal and successfully appealed their assessment and had it lowered.
Yes.
And this is a base year jurisdiction, and so when the reassessment occurs in 2025, all previous stipulations for prior tax years do not apply. And it should be known, the flip side of that coin is each and every parcel owner has the ability to appeal their assessment each and every year. And so when 2025 hits, all previous stipulations or agreements or revisions to an assessment because of a petition no longer apply.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Madam Chairwoman, Councilwoman Cabrera has joined the meeting, and she has her hand up, as well as Councilwoman.
Okay, I'd like to welcome Councilman Cabrera, but first I'm going to take comments from Councilman Bracy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say for the record, for anyone that's watching, on February 20th, and this goes back to what Chair Oliver was referencing on the 20th. On the 20th, they'll start with the Highlands, 40 acres, Trolley and Trolley Square. And then in March, after they're done with those neighborhoods, they go to the Triangle, 9th Ward, Brandywine Village, Harlan Park, and Brandywine Hills. And then after those, based on the county's announcement, they would go to East Lawn, Price's Run, Northeast, East Lake, and 11th Street Bridge area, as well as up near I-495. So that gives council members in these districts some time, except for the 8th district, you know, obviously that's starting next week. That gives council members some time to get notifications out to their communities, since it's not really kicking off in most communities until March. So I just wanted to put that out there because I know, Chair Oliver, that was one of your concerns. And I just pulled up the county's announcement just to kind of verify what we were talking about. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to follow up on that in a minute. Next, we have Councilman Cabrera. Would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for acknowledging me. First, I want to thank you for the presentation, giving us more details on this important event that's taking place. I just want to go back to historically conversations that have been had about this assessment through the years. From what I understand is that we have fought long and hard to have properties assessed. It has been well over 3 decades before properties have been assessed in Newcastle County. Why is this important? So if you have a house and this is what it's worth, and that's what it was worth 35 years ago, that is what you're paying taxes on that worth, even though it has changed throughout the years. If you have new construction and now that property's worth, let's say, you know, $300,000 versus your neighbor's house is worth $50,000. This is especially important at the beach, where a lot of those properties that they bought very inexpensively years ago are now worth millions of dollars. So people pay taxes on the worth of their properties. Here in Wilmington, one of the biggest concerns that was discussed when I was first on council 8 years ago or 6 years ago is that we are not getting the revenue in property taxes because we have not had an assessment. There has been a lot of new construction and we are getting those taxes, but there have been homes and neighborhoods that have improved while others have stayed the same and some have actually gone down. We fear that we may get lower values on these properties versus higher values. I understand the concern about not wanting to overburden our residents whose property values may have gone up with having to pay higher taxes. And that is a genuine concern, not to be dismissed. But in the big picture of things, when we looked at the yearly budget and we look at the expenses of a city that where things have gone up, people's salaries have gone up, expenses have gone up, utilities, water, gas, all the things that we have to pay as a city to maintain the city, we're not getting an increase on property taxes, but those residents are still getting city services at the same level and sometimes even better. So we have to be realistic as leaders, understand the importance of this property assessment and going forward. And it has to be, and it is about being fair across the way. Because if I have a house and I'm paying taxes on a $200,000 home, but my neighbor's paying taxes right next door to me on a $50,000 value from 35 years ago, where's the equity there? So it's about everybody paying the same amount on what is a fair assessment. And this literally will help the city of Wilmington with having accurate values of what our properties are worth. And if I can now follow up with a question, Council, Madam Chair had mentioned knocking on doors. As part of the assessment, do you go inside the homes or is it just the property value at the outside? How do you evaluate the value of the property? Is it just indoor, outdoor, or indoor as well in the neighborhood?
Thank you for your comments and your questions. Related to whether we conduct an interior inspection, again, it is very rare and it only happens at the request of the homeowner or resident. And so in most cases, we conduct an exterior inspection, and to be very technical here, we employ what's called an extraordinary assumption that the condition of the exterior and the condition of the interior are the same. And so unless otherwise noted, that is how we make our judgment call as to what the condition of the interior is based on our observation of the exterior. And more specifically, we also have other resources in our toolkit, if you will. We have access to the multiple list service where we can glean information, as well as permit and the recorder's office. And so we do rely on additional resources of information that are beyond just what we see at the time of the exterior inspection. So I hope that's answered your question. And I will say, specific to your comment, and
Thank
perhaps,
you.
Sure, and perhaps to address some of Chair's concerns, from a tax policy perspective, tax relief measures to protect certain classes like the senior citizens, so as to not run them out of town, if you will. Those are typically tax policy measures that are instituted that are separate and distinct from our job to set new market values. And the last thing I'll say is, if it's the case that assessments have gone on too long, which is the case here, one side of the coin is cyclical reassessments. The International Association of Assessing Officers suggests that cyclical reassessments or ongoing reassessments occur at least every 6 years. On the flip side is California with Proposition 13, and it has created quite an unfair tax policy structure out there, because you could have the exact same home. You could have one neighbor purchased it in 1983, the other purchased it in 2020, and your taxes are predicated on what your purchase price was. They could literally be the exact same home, and you could have divergently different taxes. And so just trying to illustrate the spectrum of tax policy here. And so I hope that information is helpful for the formation of tax policy as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Council Member Spadola, we have another one on the agenda. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Can you, is there a comparable county to Newcastle that you've done? And I'm curious on the outliers, what has the worst case scenario for somebody been and the best case? For the individual homeowner, in terms of, did somebody's property tax, are we, like, the worst case scenario for somebody's tax is going up? Are we talking 20%, 50%, 500%?
Great question. The most comparable size jurisdiction that recently underwent a reassessment that Tyler Technologies conducted is right above the state line, Delaware County. It has an approximate parcel count that Newcastle County shares. That was completed several years ago. And what's the fluctuation of a potential individual tax bill? And I'm afraid to say I have no great answer for you. I don't want to give you a number and then have that not be the case in the city of Wilmington and essentially prove that I misspoke. And so it's possible that your tax bill could go up 50%. It is a possibility. And it's also possible, likewise, that your tax bill could go down 50%. And so I'm sorry to say I don't have a concrete answer on that last portion of your question. Thank you.
Thank you. And I too would like to acknowledge that we've been discussing this since 107, as previous council members have stated. But I just received a text from an individual who lives in the 2nd District and says she didn't know anything about this. And that's my point into everybody's not looking at Newcastle County's website, right? She just had to pull it up. I represent the 3rd District, but I also represent all the city of Wilmington, right? So she just texted me, she lives right by Trolley Square, and she's watching this, and she said she didn't know anything about this tax. So that's my point. I know for tax assessments, which has nothing to do with you, the deadline is March the 10th. So we were already, that's why our meet was taking place for individuals who's 60 and over to fill out these, the assessment that will help them with their taxes. So with this coming, we're trying to get these forms filled out. So it's two things going on at once. That was another reason why I asked, could you push back? And it's not just about you're not going to be in the 3rd District on, until maybe March. I just think it's for everybody, as far as notification. I mean, like, people, I'm saying the city of Wilmington or Newcastle County, y'all send us taxes, y'all should have put that in our literature. You could have sent that so that people would know. Everybody's not watching, looking at the website, to be honest. She just texted me, right? So you're just knocking on people's door in the Highland area or the 5th District or all over there and just said, look, we're coming to do assessment for the city of Wilmington. You're not going to get the phone calls. We're going to get them. Our phones are going to be flooded. So, I mean, it is what it is. It's overdue. I get all that. But I still represent not just the 3rd District. I have family throughout the whole city. Yes, Mr. President.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. You just mentioned it's possible for taxes to possibly go up 50% or go down 50%. What is normally, like, from your perspective, what has normally happened in, like, the more affluent neighborhoods, and what has normally happened in the poorer neighborhoods?
That's a really good question, and the concept here is regressivity of the taxes, of the tax structure, and of the assessments themselves. And so a published report that I think was the genesis for the eventual reassessment indicated that property values, I should say more clearly, assessed values ranged between 14% and 32% of their actual true market value based on recent sales. And furthermore, that higher price homes had a lower percentage of assessed value relative to actual market value. This is a phenomenon in the real estate assessment industry. It's called regressivity, again, such that higher price homes are taxed at a lower level and lower price homes are taxed at a higher level. There are statistical tools to analyze this to ensure that effects of regressivity are minimized and altogether eliminated in our forecast or opinion of market value. And so generally speaking, our focus will be to establish the proper market value, reflect the market for all homes, irrespective of what price bracket they're in. And so I hope that's answered your question, but if it hasn't, I'm happy to readdress.
Honestly, you lost me.
Sorry.
So, like, what has happened? What has happened in the more affluent neighborhood? Had their property taxes gone up traditionally from what?
As a consequence of the
Yes.
reassessment, yes, and yes, in keeping with that thought, which is they are undervalued to begin with. If we go back to the presentation, that conceptual slide, if you're paying less than your neighbor, chances are your taxes will go up.
Okay.
And my personal opinion is that is the case once you get to higher priced homes. That's certainly my opinion. I think the true outcome will be determined a little bit later in the project, but I think that's a reasonable assumption that taxes will go up on higher priced homes, perhaps more dramatically than an average price home.
And then in the poorer neighborhoods, what has happened as far as the taxes?
Yeah, I mean, the opposite of that, and to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples, right? What we certainly don't want to do is use a sale price of a higher price home and apply that to a home that is lower price. This is particularly true in concentrated areas of gentrification, right? So for example, what you don't do is you don't take the rehab home and apply it to my grandmom's home next door. Don't do that. And so we have to stratify. Sure, do we establish by location? Yeah, but then there are other elements of stratification that we consider, and a primary one when the improvements typically are the same, as is the case of row homes, the primary driver of substratifier is condition.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. And one last thing, when you said you don't have any literature and bilingual, do you plan on getting some literature, or y'all just forgot about that population?
And we certainly didn't forget about anyone. And like I said, we have provisions in our call line or hotline for Spanish-speaking interpreters. However, if it would please you, Chair, I'm happy to produce a bilingual printed material for the public. if that
Yes,
would-
I think that would be good. I mean, we have a lot of bilingual residents that live in the city of Wilmington, and to have your organization come here and do such a major job and don't have any bilingual literature, I find that astonishing. Okay, Councilwoman Cabrera, do you want to say a few words, because we have another topic?
Yes, very quickly. First of all, Madam Chair, thank you for bringing the fact that this information should be available in a bilingual format, being that we have a lot of Hispanic homeowners and they may wonder what's happening in the neighborhood. So that is a way that we can serve all our constituents. So my question was, when you were talking about the assessment in the neighborhoods, the market that we just came out of, and I'm not sure what it's going to do for this year, but we saw that home sales were way above the norm. Like, people were paying $100,000 over what the last person paid for that home, and they were escalated, and it really didn't reflect what those accurate property values in the home. So let me ask you this, as part of this property assessment, what just happened in the market, homes selling for $400,000 that were really $300,000, how does that affect the outcome, if at all, of the property assessment?
Thank you for your question. It is an extremely common question. I've done speaking throughout the state of Delaware. It's a question that always comes up during every public information session. And so, again, our job is to interpret the market. We don't make the market. I don't impose my perspective on the market. And so certainly we've had a hyperactive, inflated market in the last few years, and that's a result of the low cost of debt. Tables have turned a little bit. The cost of debt has increased. That typically represents 80 to 90% of a homeowner's acquisition in terms of the capital that they deploy. And so the recent turn has mathematically suggested that there should be a 30% decrease in effective purchasing power. Okay, so that would necessarily put downward pressure on price points, and we see that in the market today relative to the highs of the last few years. Our effective date evaluation is in the future still. And so we consider a time period of sales across several years, and we use what's called a time index regression to adjust from all the sales on a monthly basis to the effective date of value, which again is in the future. And so we do make adjustments for market differences or changes over time.
Thank you.
Thank you. One last follow-up question, and we're going to keep it moving.
Many of the homes in the historic area, to mention the east side, in other words, are what I would describe, and I'm not an appraiser, but as functionally obsolescent. How does that factor into your assessment? I mean, I know how I would price it, but how does that factor into your assessment when a home is basically unusable? I mean, functionally unusable.
Good question. And so I think Our job is to, again, interpret the market. And so if there's an active market for homes that might have functional or some sort of exterior obsolescence, that's belied by the actors in the market, particularly the purchase price. Perhaps a buyer pays a little bit less because there's obsolescence present. And so we don't technically determine a factor of obsolescence. It's essentially built or baked into that purchase price, and then we reflect that. And so directly, we wouldn't take into account obsolescence, and particularly if it was on the inside of the home, because we would naturally not have access to that in most cases.
Yeah, but parcel view would give you an access to the inside interior of the home. So if you pull up parcel view, you would see that it's a 2-bedroom or it's a 3-bedroom. You have to walk through 1 bedroom. So you do have that ability on parcel view to use that. But I understand that you think that's market driven, but I think it's such a weight on that particular style of house in that neighborhood. I just wanted to know how that would overall come up with an assessment, not a value, but with an assessment. You answered my question. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, with that being said, I really appreciate you coming during that intense conversation, having that intense conversation, and providing us with this information. And your number is on the back?
It
It's
is,
in the
yes.
pen?
Yep.
Okay, I'll be calling you later on this evening.
Thank you.
That's okay with you?
Sure. And I would just suggest that if there's anything that we can do throughout this process, feel free to contact me. Our goal is to be a good corporate citizen in this case, and so we're happy to have any discussions that would benefit this council or your constituency.
Councilman Sher, she says she knows just who you are. Thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have presentation on I-95 project from Delaware Transportation. Is someone on the line?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and the committee this evening. What we're going to talk about is we have a follow-up contract to the I-95 Restore the Corridor contract that the main work just was completed. And so I just wanted to, really the intent of tonight is to update the council on some of the amenities that some of the enhancements that we've included in this contract in the city of Wilmington, and just make sure that council is in favor of what we're proposing, and our intent is to get a blessing from you so that we can wrap up the contract documents later this month. We've worked extensively with different divisions within city government to make sure that, such as parks and public works, and make sure that what we're proposing meets some of the ideas that they have for the areas. We've also worked extensively with Councilwoman McCoy, who did just a fantastic job of reaching out to her constituents and getting their input on one of the facets that we'll talk about tonight. And so really, we've done a lot of legwork, a lot of positive feedback to this point, and so we just want to make sure that you all are in favor of it as well. Next slide, please. So what I'm going to talk about, project schedule, as well as a little bit additional background, more than just what I just covered. Then we'll talk about the project, the scope of work, what's actually included in the contract. And then we'll get into the different community enhancements. I have Bill Geschrei from our consultant, Whitman Record and Associates. He'll actually cover all the enhancements, and then at the end we'll certainly open up to any Q&A that you guys have. Next slide, please. So current schedule, like I said, our final contract documents are due at the end of this month. So that's why it's really important that we meet with you folks tonight and get your blessings so that we can wrap things up in the next couple of weeks, so that we can get the contract advertised, get construction started this fall. And then the overall construction is going to take about a year. And so finishing next fall, obviously weather permitting. Our intent is to work normal work hours. So unlike the mainline I-95 work, which had basically round the clock construction, This work is a little bit more into the city, at city level, below the viaduct. And so we're working normal working hours. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the nexus for this project came about early in the overall project when we were looking at all of the repairs within the corridor. We worked with our local contractors association to identify some work that could be pulled from the main contract without affecting, the efficiency of the main contract's work approach, as well as give our local contractors opportunities to bid on some of the work. And so we had 3 contracts that we pulled out and went in advance of the mainline work. And then we had this one contract that made much more sense to follow up the mainline I-95 work. And so that is really what this contract is. It's focused on just the final touches on the substructure, the area underneath the viaduct. Throughout design of the mainline project, we had worked with city officials in identifying ways to sort of mitigate a lot of the impacts that we, as a construction project, had on the city. And so, rather than include them in the mainline contract, it gave us a couple additional years to work with city officials to identify what those enhancements could be and get them into this contract. So it made sense on kind of 2 fronts that we have this second contract. So as I mentioned, in addition to the enhancements, really that, what we had kind of identified early on was that this contract's focus would be the structural concrete repairs underneath the viaduct. And then of course we include the city enhancements. Next slide, please. At this time, I'll turn it over to Bill to kind of walk through each of the various enhancements that we've proposed in the contract.
Thanks, Jason. Well, good evening, worthy council members. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight. As Jason said, I'm Bill Geschrei. I'm with Whitman Ruckert and Associates. We're the consultant hired by the department to support them in putting these contract documents together. So we just wanted to run through a few slides to give you an update on the enhancements that we're going to include or like to include with your approval in our contract. Next slide, please. So one of the major items is the dog park. This is something that has been on a wish list for the community. And our dog park development is really based on input from that community. And what we've done is developed a fairly small area. We didn't want it to overwhelm the community, but it's a small area where folks can take their dogs and walk to a safe area. The park would be separated into 2 parks, like most dog parks, one for little dogs and one for larger sized dogs for safety. The DelDOT will own the property, but the city will be maintaining the property, including a water feature. So they will supply water to help refresh our furry friends and, of course, their owners. The next slide will show you a rendering that we have developed. Again, this is just an artistic rendering. You can see the interstate in the background. This is along South Jackson Street, right across from Chestnut Street. As you can see, not a large space, but certainly adequate for the community. So this is pretty close to what you would expect if we would construct this facility. Next slide, please. If you're familiar with the area, there's some existing basketball courts that were located underneath the viaduct, but because of construction, we had to relocate those for safety reasons. They are now currently located along North Jackson Street, and these courts are in service now. But once construction is done, we want to repurpose these courts. We don't want to tear them out. We'd like to reuse this area. So in lieu of basketball courts, in working with the city, we're going to place 3 pickleball courts and 1 tennis court. And these courts will be open to the community. And the next slide shows, this is referring to the existing Adams Street basketball courts underneath the viaduct. These are going to remain, but we are going to refurbish these. We felt it's necessary to keep the Adams Street courts in service long term. So we're going to do what we need to refurbish them, make sure they're in like-new condition. So once the project is done, we'll have the 3 pickleball courts and the tennis courts, and then the original Adams Street courts refurbished underneath the viaduct. And the next slide will show a kind of a rendering of what we anticipate this to look like. So you can see here in the foreground, again, we're looking kind of east-northeast along North Jackson Street. You can see the pickleball courts and the tennis courts, kind of the blue playing surface. And then in the background, underneath the viaduct, will be the refurbished in the original Adams Street courts. So the 3 courts that we had originally will still maintain the 3 courts. So we feel this is a nice enhancement to improve the recreation in the area. Next slide, please. The city has also asked us to incorporate additional lighting. Now, this lighting will be for safety reasons. There's 2 areas of focus. One will be the overpasses between 6th and 10th Street, north of the viaduct, as well as underneath the viaduct along Liberty Street all the way up to 4th Street. Our goal here is to improve lighting for pedestrian safety. The new lights will meet current codes for safety. I will note that our project does not include any aesthetic lighting. That is a separate issue that the city is considering on their own. So our project will include improved safety lighting. The next slide will show an aerial view of the I-95. And just to give you some bearings, the 10th Street overpass is in the foreground and the 6th Street is in the background. So those 5 overpasses we'll be placing street lights to enhance safety in the area. Next slide. We've also looked into doing some beautification, and the goal here really is just to improve the driver experience as he leaves the interstate, clean up the area, if you will, in the sense that we'd like to plant some native species just to improve the view shed as you leave the interstate. Obviously, we're not going to make this into some kind of fancy landscaping feature, but it will be something that's hopefully easy to maintain. There has been talk of a welcome sign. That's still something that's under consideration. The next slide will show you just in plan view some of the areas that we would improve some of the landscaping. This is, if you're familiar with I-95 northbound, when you come off of exit 6 to Maryland Avenue, there are some areas along Adams Street that we've got. We just kind of graphically represented some nominal plantings just to improve the area, including some easy to maintain species, just to improve the aesthetics of the area. The next slide shows a second area that we would consider for beautification. This is the exit ramp to 10th Street, a little further up the road on I-95 northbound. Again, just some areas to improve. If you know the area, it has a lot of really beautiful rock outcrops, the famous blue rock in this area. So we're just proposing some nominal improvements to this area just to make the view shed a little nicer for those folks leaving the interstate. Next slide, please. And we also just wanted to mention that there's been a lot of ornamental fencing. If you're familiar with this area, this is a fence that's been installed in many of the areas adjacent to the interstate. There's a few missing pieces. We just want to fill in the gap. So this is just some additional fencing to help improve safety of the area near the viaduct. Next slide. And finally, we just wanted to mention, while we are not incorporating any rain gardens or green space infrastructure in our project, we do know the city is developing this with a separate consultant. And we're certainly working with them and coordinating with them to make sure that the work that we do not conflict with what they're doing, so that they can incorporate their work into our project once we are done. So those are the community enhancements that we wanted to offer. And so Jason and I are available to take any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to say, I think y'all really did a good job over there. And Councilman McCord, that dog park's going to really be nice. All of this improvement for its beautification, the Adams Street courts, all this is overdue in that area. So, and especially the lighting, because it's dark over there in the evening. I'm looking forward to seeing all these amenities take place. Kudos to DelDOT.
Thank you.
Anybody have any?
Madam Chair, if I may.
Sure, I'm sorry.
The lighting, does it create any light pollution into the neighborhoods?
I don't think that, not necessarily. The lighting will be placed at either end of the bridges.
Okay.
So the intent is not to really light the community, but more light the roadway. There are sidewalks in the area, so the intent is for pedestrians that are walking on the bridges, those overpasses between 6th and 10th. They'll have the sidewalks will be a little more lit up. So these aren't really high mass lights. These are the standard lights that you see, 30-foot high. So it's really the lights focus more for the overpass and the sidewalk area in the vicinity of the bridge, just to keep that
So
area a little safer.
You don't see them bleeding into to Jackson Street area or anything like that?
I mean, I did have to look at the photometrics. I don't think it's significant. It depends on where you install the light pole. Obviously, if it's too close to the intersection, there might be some bleeding. So we'd be happy to take a look just to make sure that we don't think there's going to be any bleeding of lights. Because yeah, I would agree. We don't want to overlight the area. We'd like to keep that light focused more on the bridge and the sidewalks on those overpasses.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Could you please follow up and send us an email regarding the lights, please?
That's good. We'll do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman McCoy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask the question about the lights. These will be the regular LED lights that have been being placed around throughout the city. Okay, well, one of the
That's correct.
things that I have noticed about the LED lights is that their footprints are not really, they don't glow, but they're a little bit more direct. So I think that that may not be an issue with the bleeding into the other areas. But I just would like to thank DelDOT because I was invited to a meeting about what was going on over at the overpasses and the bridges. And, they've done all of that beautification and a lot of murals have gone up because of all of the organization with those grassroots groups over there. And I was invited and I basically made the comment and I'm like, okay, this doesn't even affect my area. Y'all jackhammering over here where I'm at. What do I get out of it? And they were like, well, what do you want? And so once I got a chance to talk to leadership, they were like, they thought about it and they're like, well, what about this? And I'm like, you know what, that's not a bad idea. And I'm just so pleased that they were open to listen. Not only have this is the second meeting, we've had a meeting already with our state legislators to make them aware of what was going on and make certain that they were okay with it. And then they just wanted to make certain that they informed the city as well. They don't want to step on our toes. They want to make certain that everyone is okay with what's to come. And how can we turn down beautification to our city where we're actually not having to take it out of our budget? So I just would like to say thank you to DelDOT.
Well, thank you. And again, thank you, Councilwoman McCoy, for your help in getting, kind of rallying the community and giving us the feedback on the dog park in particular.
Is there any questions from council members online? Is there any questions from anyone from the public? Okay, if there's no more questions, we really appreciate y'all coming on and y'all have a great evening. Job well done.
Thank you, and you as well.
No problem.
Take care.
Okay, that completes our Public Works and Transportation Committee meeting tonight. Is there a motion
Motion to adjourn.
to adjourn? Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you.